In a recent video, I said I was going to try using paraffin as a dry lubricant when I'm putting back together a woodworking machine, in that case, a radial arm saw. And I considered it somewhat of an experiment. The way I said it was, I'm going to try this and see how it goes. Well, I've already got some results to share, and I want to say right up front, these are early results. A more complete evaluation of any dry lubricant would cover not merely the early results, but how things act over time, and I don't have that data right now. Nonetheless, when trying to apply paraffin while assembling this machine, I learned a couple things, and I gained some confirmation of advice that was given to me by others with more experience. So I'm just going to show you what I've got so far. For this very unscientific test, all I've done here is try to use paraffin in two ways that are very different. One is I'm lubricating the column of this radial arm saw, which needs to go into this base, like this. And it is a very tight fit. So that's one situation. The second situation is the elevating screw of the same radial arm saw is here, and it threads through this large lifting nut. And so the screw and or nut need lubrication as well to make things work smoothly and avoid wear and tear. In fact, there are anecdotal stories where insufficient lubrication caused damage to this very nut, perhaps because it's aluminum instead of steel, which is an odd choice compared to the rest of this machine. And these two things give me two contrasting ways to evaluate paraffin. I'm going to apply it perhaps rather liberally, but then I'm going to wipe it down a bit to smooth it out and try and make sure I end up with a fairly thin layer of the wax. I can push this down, although my goodness, I wonder if I have too much paraffin on, because this is really hard to push down. I expected this to be easier, not harder. The elevation screw needs lubricant as well. And apparently these kinds of situations are cases where we don't need to be so careful about how much paraffin we put on. Someone suggested that you can put on plenty because this screw is simply going through a nut on the other side. So after applying what was supposed to be a thin layer of paraffin to the column itself, and a generous layer of paraffin to the elevation screw, I tried assembling the entire column together, which involved fully turning that elevation screw through its entire length. But because the column fit was so tight, I ended up taking everything back apart to regroup. The next thing I want to learn about paraffin is whether my degreaser, crud cutter, can get rid of it. Turns out if you Google for how to remove paraffin wax, mostly what you find are people trying to remove it from their clothing because they got candle wax on their clothes. So the crud cutter is struggling to remove it, which leaves me both impressed and annoyed. So I'm going to go with stronger weapons. Mineral spirits. Okay, looks like mineral spirits will get rid of paraffin, but crud cutter will not. So you remember all that paraffin that I generously applied to this elevation screw? Most of it ended up as shavings down in the bottom of this cup thing. After seeing all those shavings down there that had fallen off this elevation screw, I started wondering, how much paraffin is left on the elevation screw? Well, since I know that mineral spirits will take it off, what I did was I took some mineral spirits and I cleaned half of the screw. This half was cleaned off. This half I left the way it was. And not sure how much you can see on camera, but here in person, I can see a clear difference between this side and this side. I can also feel a clear difference. This feels like metal. This still feels like it has wax on it. Which to me, for this application, since this is not a tight tolerance, tight fit sort of thing, this is impressive. This is a good aspect of paraffin because it's durable. So just to summarize, and as I said, these are early results. The first thing I've learned is when you're using paraffin in a situation that's a tight fit, you have to be careful. It's trickier than some of the alternatives. When you put paraffin between two things that have a really fine tolerance, it takes up a lot of space. And even though it is a lubricant, it can actually make things harder to move in situations which are a very tight fit. On the other hand, there are early indications that paraffin lives up to its reputation for durability. Seems like there's a pretty good reason why so many serious bicyclists use paraffin to lubricate their chain. As I continue assembling this machine, I may go forward with a mix of multiple options. So in the big picture, what have I learned about paraffin from my short experience with it? Two things. One, almost all of my preconceived notions about paraffin were wrong. Second thing I've learned is paraffin is useful, but it's not the perfect solution to every lubrication problem.